And to put the sheer power of that historical male biological drive into perspective, look no further than Genghis Khan. Because of his extreme
Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're unpacking the transmutation of desire, overcoming modern distractions. We're going to dive deep into the actual psychological and biological roots of why it is just so incredibly hard to stay focused these days, and we'll unpack a 2,000-year-old method to actually conquer these modern digital traps. So, let's get right into it.
All right, we're going to start things off by examining a pretty profound question raised by the source material. Why is explicit content cheaper and, frankly, way more accessible than alcohol or gambling? Like, have you ever actually stopped to think about why modern society actively normalizes and just pushes this cheap, hypersexualized content to our screens, often totally for free? It's everywhere. And to figure out how to defend against it, we really need to grasp the sheer scale of this shift. This brilliantly illustrates the problem by contrasting our historical baseline with what we deal with today. Think about it. 2,000 years ago, an average person might go their entire lifetime, literally their whole life, seeing only a handful of highly stimulating or explicit sites. Today, well, it takes what, 1 minute on a smartphone to see thousands? We are getting bombarded with more artificial stimulation in a single 60-second scroll than our ancestors saw from birth to death. It's like a giant biological short circuit.
So what's the actual damage of this unnatural dopamine overload? Well, the source quantifies it, and it's pretty staggering. We're looking at a massive 200 to 300% increase in our daily frustration and depression levels. Because we are just constantly overstimulated by all this artificial imagery, our baseline mood totally drops. We get irritable, we lose our drive, our patience just evaporates, and it even messes with our genuine interest in real-life partners. But honestly, it gets worse. Look at this number. 30 to 50%. This constant barrage of artificial arousal actually destroys up to half the capacity of our prefrontal cortex. And if you're wondering, okay, so what? Well, the prefrontal cortex is the exact part of the brain that handles decision-making, focus, and self-control. It is literally the hardware that separates our rational, intentional behavior from basic animal instincts. We're actively degrading our own self-control.
So how on earth do we fix this? Let's move into our next section. The biology of urges, a survival mechanism.
To understand the fix, we really have to look objectively at our evolutionary context and recognize that these urges, they aren't inherent flaws. They're survival mechanisms. The source breaks it down like this. Female biology evolved to prioritize the incredibly resource-intensive task of childrearing, seeking out stability and resources. Male biology, on the flip side, evolved with this really intense drive aimed at resource gathering and maximum gene distribution. Both of these are perfectly natural biological designs that kept the human race going.
And to put the sheer power of that historical male biological drive into perspective, look no further than Genghis Khan. Because of his extreme reproductive drive, it's estimated he literally has 15 million modern descendants alive today. 15 million. That right there perfectly illustrates just how intense and deeply hardwired this biological urge is in human DNA.
So here's the kicker, right? Modern media absolutely weaponizes this perfectly natural biology. They know that humans are easily kept intentionally aroused and that sexual emotion is incredibly easy to manipulate. By keeping us in this weird state of constant, low-level artificial arousal through our screens, they hijack our attention. It is straight up the easiest way to control attention in the digital age. We're essentially getting hacked through our own ancient survival instincts.
All right, now that we know the trap, let's look at the way out. Section 2, the secret of transmutation.
So, what is this exactly? Ancient philosophers, Imam al-Ghazali, Napoleon Hill, even innovators like Nikola Tesla utilized a method called sex transmutation. And to be clear, this isn't just about mere suppression. If you just try to push an urge down, it usually fights back way harder. Instead, sex transmutation is the process of mentally redirecting that intense sexual energy, those massive spikes of dopamine and testosterone, and converting them into alternative, highly productive pursuits. It's about taking that potent energy and using it as fuel for your own personal success.
Okay, but how do we actually do that? Let's dive right into Section 3, applying the transmutation method. The framework here requires a really quick 3-step mental pivot the second you feel triggered. Step 1, acknowledge the urge. Don't panic, just recognize it and admit that, yeah, giving in feels good for a second, but it's completely temporary. Step 2, instantly consider the guilt and the massive loss of focus and self-respect that comes right after. Step 3, use that stark contrast to immediately redirect that energy into a specific goal. Just instantly pivot that intense internal friction into studying or building a skill.
This strategy is a real game changer because it leverages what we can call the walls closing in effect. Think about it. When do we study the absolutely hardest? Usually the night before a big exam, right? We kind of need that pressure. Well, this transmutation strategy leverages that exact same human nature. By refusing to give in to the urge, you intentionally create this internal discomfort, and channeling that unmet urge forces ultimate productivity and unstoppable action. It's like having a looming deadline pushing you forward.
Chemically speaking, here's what's happening. When you look at an artificial release, yeah, you get a quick dopamine spike, but it has incredibly low long-term benefit. It just leaves you drained. But when you make progress on a goal using that redirected friction, you get a totally different spike. Achieving those small wins naturally spikes your dopamine and testosterone, but in a healthy, highly beneficial way that actually builds your future without ever relying on explicit content.
And the cool thing is, the target of your transmutation just shifts as you grow. If you're unmarried, you channel that immense energy toward building your skills, establishing your career, and aiming for a stable marriage. But once you're married, the energy doesn't just vanish, it evolves. You channel that exact same drive toward family protection, societal welfare, and building a real legacy. It's the exact same fuel, just going into a much bigger engine.
Now, to really make this work, the source lays out some essential realities. First off, you've got to practice instant visual self-control. Like the millisecond a trigger pops up, look away before your brain even has time to be manipulated. Second, always treat women with absolute respect in the real world. And crucially, remember that 100% control is impossible. These are powerful human drives. So if you have an occasional failure, do not despair. It happens. Just reset and get back on track.
This brings us to the ultimate point of all of this. Let's head into our final section, finding a higher purpose.
The source gives this incredibly profound warning, quote, "Uncontrolled lust blinds you to the true nature of women as co-warriors and shields and blinds you to the future you want to build." It's a really powerful thought. Failing to transmute this energy literally warps your reality. It reduces women to mere commodities in your mind, completely blinding you to their real value as essential partners, as co-warriors in life, and as providers of genuine mental peace.
Which brings us to our final point, and really, the biggest question you have to ask yourself. Overcoming this modern digital trap demands a goal so monumental that it forces you to sweat, to grow, and to totally rise above your base instincts. You need a target worthy of all this incredible energy. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I'll leave you with this to chew on. What will your great life goal be? Figure that out and start channeling